Harry Dunn's parents break down in tears as son's killer utters guilty in court. 3 years after mowing down 19-year-old motorbiker and fleeing UK, as victim's family hope US diplomat will now return to face justice.
The parents of Harry Dunn have broken down in tears after their son's killer pleaded guilty to causing his death by careless driving 3 years after the crash. U.S. diplomat Anne Sacoolas today admitted responsibility for the death of the 19-year-old motorcyclist in a collision outside RAF Croughton, a U.S. military base in Northamptonshire, in August 2019. There were gasps in the Old Bailey this afternoon as the 45-year-old, appearing by video link from the U.S., pleaded not guilty to the charge, but admitted the lesser offense of causing death by careless driving. It comes 3 years after she fled the UK using diplomatic immunity asserted on her behalf by the US government 19 days following the crash. Today in court, prosecutor Duncan Atkinson Casey said the plea to the lesser charge would be accepted by the Crown, and the case was adjourned for sentencing in the week commencing November 28. She now faces up to 5 years in prison, with Mr. Dunn's family saying they accepted Sacoolas's plea to the lesser charge as they didn't wish to separate her from her children. But outside court, his mother Charlotte Charles said she of course wants the diplomat to return to the UK for the sentencing. The hearing today marked the beginning of the end of the 3-year battle by Mr. Dunn's family, who were sitting in court today, for accountability over the crash. The diplomat had been driving on the wrong side of the road after leaving the airbase on August 27, 2019. She hit the teenager as he was traveling in the opposite direction on his motorbike. Sacoolas appeared via video link in Court 1 of the Old Bailey for a plea and case management hearing this afternoon. The defendant, who is on unconditional bail, identified herself before entering her pleas before Senior Judge Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb. When she was asked how she pleaded to the charge of causing death by dangerous driving, she leaned forward in her chair as she answered not guilty. When asked how she pleaded to causing death by careless or inconsiderate driving, she stumbled over her words before saying, "Guilty." Gasps rang out from the public gallery where 10 of Mr. Dunn's family and friends watched on, some of them bursting into tears. Both of Mr. Dunn's parents held their heads in their hands as Sacoolas pleaded guilty. Telling the court the Crown accepted the plea of causing death by careless driving, Mr. Atkinson said, "The Crown recognizes putting at risk a vulnerable road user is capable of amounting to dangerous driving. The prosecution has taken into account the mitigation available to this defendant in the balance of justice. It has been considered at the very highest level. The Crown considers the plea of causing death by careless driving as one that is acceptable."
Mr. Atkinson said the Crown would not be proceeding to trial on the causing death by dangerous driving charge. Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb said that no evidence was offered to the charge of causing death by dangerous driving, which carries the maximum of 14 years, and directed that a not guilty verdict should be entered. She told Sacoolas, "Sentence will be adjourned until a convenient date in the week commencing November 28, 2022. The judge said that there was no order she could make that could compel Sacoolas to travel to the UK to be sentenced. One of the most powerful mitigating features is the degree of remorse felt by the defendant. Attention has rightly been drawn to the remorse demonstrated by Mrs. Sacoolas by cooperating in these proceedings at all. I direct that Mrs. Sacoolas attends court in person to be sentenced. I remind everyone that this case concerns the sudden and unexpected death 2 years ago of a young man who was lawfully riding his motorbike with proper care and attention. Personal attendance and voluntary surrender to the court of Mrs. Sacoolas for sentence will provide weighty evidence indeed of genuine remorse. Sacoolas said she understood. The judge granted Sacoolas bail ahead of her sentencing on a date in the week commencing 28 November. Speaking after the hearing this afternoon, his mother said her family have accepted the guilty plea as they didn't wish to separate her from her children. Charlotte Charles told the PA news agency it was important that Sacoolas did what you and I would have to do when facing the UK justice system, saying they had to rely on the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, to carry out whatever process they felt was suitable. Asked if she was happy the CPS had accepted the plea to the lesser offence of causing death by careless driving, Mrs. Charles said, "Yes, absolutely. Before we knew she'd left the country, from day one, alongside fulfilling that promise to Harry, we wanted to make sure that she did do what you and I would have to do. Immediately, we said that we didn't wish to separate her from her children. It's not their fault. Some of them were in the car with her that night. I can't even begin to imagine what nightmares they've had since then, because from the bits and pieces we do know, it was horrific. So with it being a remote process, we were more than happy with that, for their sake. They've always been in the forefront of our mind. When you're a mum and you know that you always want to be there to protect your children, her children are still important. So we just had to put our faith in our justice system, and we always did have faith in our justice system. And we had to rely on them to carry out whatever process they felt was suitable. We've never put any investment of thought or effort or any of our personal time into worrying about that. We're just happy with accountability." Mrs. Charles added she of course wants Anne Sacoolas to return to the UK for her sentencing hearing. Mr. Dunn's mother said she had finally fulfilled the heartbreaking promise she made to her son on the night he died, that they would seek justice for him. Becoming emotional when recalling the night he died, she said, "That night was and will always be the worst ever of our lives. I had no idea of what laid ahead, I had no idea that it was going to be this hard, but making that promise not only to him directly, hoping wherever he was at that point." Mrs. Charles took a moment to compose herself, before adding, "I've never broken a promise to either of my boys, and I damn well was not going to start when I found out that it was not going to be as easy as I would have assumed it should have been. Getting to court and getting to where we are now has been the most monumental thing for me because I can talk to him now and tell him we've done it. Promise complete. I feel I can breathe easier. I don't have that guilt on my shoulders of not having done it yet. I've gone from not being able to feel proud because it hadn't yet been done, to now where I can say I now do feel proud. Most of all I feel proud of Harry because, without the values he had when he was with us, I'm not sure if we would have been as strong as what we are to get the job done." Mr. Dunn's father Tim said, "I'm a bit different from Charlotte because I speak to Harry every day. I go up to the crash site quite a lot. I went there a couple of days ago to trim and put some daffodils in ready for the spring.
I speak to him every morning. I've got a photo, well, it's not actually, it's a drawing that a friend of mine had done, at the bottom of the stairs, of one of my favorite photos of me and Harry at the football. So I say to him every morning, hello, and ask him if he's all right. It's just what I do. That night was horrific. It was the worst night ever. I have regrets. So bad, because at the time, at the crash, it never entered my head when I was at the scene and he was speaking. He was in a mess, don't get me wrong, but he was talking and I didn't think he was going to die. I really didn't. I regret, knowing now that he did die, that I didn't do more. I just beat myself up because I didn't go up to him up close, I only stood away and spoke to him. I wish I'd have gone and held Harry's hand or something. I don't know if it would have made any difference. Asked what message he would have for his son now, Mr. Dunn said, I would say to him, hopefully we've done you proud. I miss him like mad. I miss him so much. But hopefully we've given hope to other families that they can do the same as us and get justice and believe and fight, because it will happen in the end, it will happen. Last month, Sacoolas made a first appearance at Westminster Magistrates' Court via video link. The hearing had been supposed to happen earlier, but was vacated to allow ongoing discussion with the U.S. suspect. At that hearing, her lawyers said she would plead guilty to causing death by careless driving as Mr. Dunn's extended family watched from the public gallery. Her lawyers indicated she would plead guilty to the lesser charge of death by careless driving, which carries the maximum of 5 years imprisonment, the court heard. Wearing a blue suit jacket and a spotted scarf, she appeared next to her lawyer Amy Jeffress via video link from the United States for the 6-minute hearing. Harry's parents Charlotte Charles and Tim Dunn, alongside Harry's twin brother Neil, arrived wearing either a green tie or a green scarf in memory of the teenager. Sacoolas looked straight ahead throughout the hearing. Asked to confirm her name, she said, "Hi, I'm Anne Elizabeth Sacoolas." She went on to confirm her date of birth as August 28, 1977. Her barrister, Ben Cooper, KC, said, "I just wish to confirm for the record there is no indication of plea in relation to the charge of death by dangerous driving. There will in due course be a guilty plea to the charge of death by careless driving. Prosecutors will have to decide whether that plea is acceptable to them or not," the court heard. Prosecutor Duncan Atkinson, KC, said, "She is charged with causing death by dangerous driving, which is an indictable-only offence, and we therefore invite her case to be sent to the Crown Court." The offence of causing death by dangerous driving carries the maximum of 14 years. Sending the case to the Old Bailey, Chief Magistrate Paul Goldspring told the defendant, "I hope you followed most of that. The first thing I have to do is send your case to the Crown Court. I'm going to grant you unconditional bail in this case. That means there are no restrictions from the court on you." The Dunn family told the Paw News Agency they would not be commenting on the case until the conclusion of criminal proceedings. In December, the CPS said it remained committed to securing justice in this matter. Immediately after that statement, Sacoolas' legal representative said, "While we have always been willing to discuss a virtual hearing, there is no agreement at this time." An extradition request for Sacoolas was submitted by the Home Office after she was charged with death by dangerous driving, but that was rejected by the U.S. State Department in January 2020. The family Mr. Dunn were then advised that, although there could be no criminal proceedings in the U.S., they could bring a civil claim for damages against Sacoolas as her immunity was no longer valid when she returned to her home country. Lawyers acting on behalf of Sacoolas and her husband Jonathan attempted to throw the case out on the grounds it should be heard in the UK. Judge Thomas Ellis dismissed Sacoolas's submissions that the UK was a more convenient forum, keeping the case in Virginia, describing the motion as not warranted. Harry's parents then flew out to the U.S. to give evidence under oath as part of the discovery process.
Harry Dunn was a 19-year-old British man who died following a road traffic collision on August 27, 2019. He was riding his motorcycle near Croughton, Northamptonshire, United Kingdom, near the exit to RAF Croughton, when a car traveling in the opposite direction and on the wrong side of the road collided with him. The car was driven by Anne Sacoolas, who was a former U.S. spy and wife of CIA employee Jonathan Sacoolas, stationed at the time at USAF listening station RAF Croughton. Sacoolas admitted that she had been driving the car on the wrong side of the road, and the police said that, based on CCTV footage, they believed that to be true. Dunn was pronounced dead as the major trauma centre of John Radcliffe Hospital, Oxford. The collision caused diplomatic tension between UK and US officials. The US assisted Sacoolas' flight from England and voiced support for her claims to diplomatic immunity. On December 20, 2019, the Crown Prosecution Service said that Sacoolas was to be charged with causing death by dangerous driving. At a hearing at Westminster Magistrates Court, on September 29, 2022, she appeared by video link.